Welcome to the Crafty Mini and the final episode of the October Nightmare. As we're getting close to 500 subscribers, this is going to be one of the giveaways. Big shout out first of all to Patrick Bowden. So he left a really cool comment for an idea of a backstory and a colour scheme for this miniature, and it helped a lot with the creation of both. So big shout out to you there, mate. Thank you very much for your support, and on to the actual video itself. So to start with, everything's been base coated in German grey, Vallejo, and then it's a case now of dry brushing up because I want the layers to show through on this, and it's got a ton of detail, this miniature. It's a really nice print, again from Resin prints on Etsy, so go and check them out. For dry brush as well, a bit of a tip, use an old makeup brush. You can buy these in sets cheap enough from you know, wholesale stores like B&M and such. I got a pack of 10 for £2, and because they're really soft bristles, they're really good at dry brushing. So at this point, the entirety of the skin has had Vallejo refractive green put all over it. And they're working on the inner part of sort of like the belly and where the softer bits of flesh would be. If you imagine its exterior is quite hard to the elements and things, so like the belly, chest area, and then the inside of the arms and things. These are all going to get done in yellow ochre by Vallejo, and I'm just putting very little amount on the brush and wet blending them in initially to start with. Again, using a makeup brush, and then when this is all dry, we'll go in and start dry brushing up to get the detail picked out with the lighter layers. Right, so dry brushing, a couple of tips. So you want a little bit of moisture on your actual brush, and then get the paint on the brush, wick off the majority of it on a bit of paper towel, as you can see there, and then it's just a case of working with the actual details on the miniature. So there's a lot of horizontal lines on the belly, for example, so I'll be going up and down, so I'm opposite, so it picks up all the raised areas. Then it's a case now going back and forth, and while I'm doing this, I'm actually blending the paints as well. So I'll do a bit of the ochre, go in with the green, and back and forth, and these will actually start to blend with each other on the model. Because if the idea is that we're having like a lighter patch of skin on all sort of the soft fleshy areas, and the harder outer skin on the back and the tops of the arms and things, that they're all green, I want them to be a transition and not like a clear line in between the two colours. So at this point, there's a lot of colour variation between those two dry brush layers, and it's a case of going in and picking out the details with a fine brush. And all this is the base colour of both of them, so the refractive green and the yellow ochre, and then I'm just adding a tiny amount of dark sand by Vallejo just to brighten them up a little bit, and that'll unify the highlights across the whole miniature. And as you can see here, it's now just a case of going in and starting to pick out those details as best we can. There's a lot of detail on this print. The back, I've got all these bumps and undulals and the muscle structure, and on the belly there are these sort of almost like scars that go across, and then there's these eyes that pop out, and it's got a load of character on it built into this miniature. So something that I look for when I'm buying a printed miniature to paint is it's got to really, it sounds stupid, but it's got to speak to me. It's got to have a lot of character and detail on it. But anytime you're painting, you know, like flesh and muscle definition, you can really blend all the colours together, and it comes up with a nice effect in the end. And this now is just a patient moment where you just, as I say, going through now and picking out all the details. And now the exact same process again, but I've added a little bit more of the dark sand to lighten up the colours a bit more, and I'm not going where I'm going over on the actual skin, I'm not going up to the edge fully, so you're going to have a transition from the darker to the light. So you've got the deep sort of wet blended in the creases of the skin where it's the original ochre and transparent reflective green, sorry, and then building up the highlighting layers, and you just get this really nice transition and effect. And the miniature looks more detailed than it is then as well. It's a really nice simple way of doing it, and just building up the layers. It does take time, but have patience, and you know, the paint jobs will come out and they'll all look nice. This is a really nice technique for cloaks as well. Start off with a deep colour and just keep adding your main colour or accent colour to it, and then keep doing layers and layers and covering less and less and less, and you get really nice transitions. So same principle with the skin on the back of the miniature. Now, because I wanted the green just to pump out a little bit more, instead of adding the dark sand, I've added lime green from Vallejo just to give it a bit of brightness, but I've used a lot less because otherwise it would come across sort of almost too green and too garish. But exactly the same process, going through all those little folds of the skin where you can see the shoulder blades and sort of like the saggy flesh forming over it, and all these bumps and unduals and wounds and things that it's picked up. And just going through now, taking my time and picking out the detail. If it ever goes to a part where you've got the green going into the sort of brown fleshier skin, then I'll do both of the colours and wet blend on the miniature and just work my way through, so it just looks more natural of a colour transition. So at this point I noticed that some of the areas weren't quite matching up right, and so I've gone in with a bit more of the green and just extended them over like the knees and a bit further down the legs, the elbows and things, because obviously these are parts of the body that are going to get more use and more wear, so I want them to have that greener texture of the skin to show that it's been hardened by like the natural sort of environment that this creature sits in. And just going back and forth, wet blending on the miniature. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you go too far with it, you can go back with the original colour and lighten it up again, and then it's just a case of practice. You're not going to balls it up. If you really wreck it, like I've mentioned in other videos, just strip the miniature and start again. It's not a problem. As long as your paints are going on in nice thin layers, you're not going to end up caking up all the detail and hiding all the cool bits on the actual print itself or the miniature and whatever it is you're painting. So just take your time with it, and if you do balls it up, just take it back a step. It's not an issue. So for me, this is my sort of final step of highlighting. So I go back, exactly the same principle as the last two clips of the video. But this time for the ochre sort of colour, I'm adding a bit more dark sand, and for the green, I'm adding a bit more of the lime green. And this is to do the very, very highest highlight. where I'm just really sort of getting the edges and showing off all the detail. I'm not plastering this all over now, and this just gives it that extra bit of definition, and again shows off the quality of the print and all the detail on it, and that's what's going to make the paint job look even better. You've got to marry the sort of two, the detail and your actual painting skills, and this is that last layer that just brings everything together. And then I'm just going around just making sure there's any areas where I've made mistakes and things, and just adding a bit more colour, some blotches as and where I need them, just to give a bit more character and sort of layers to the skin. I'll go in with the original darker green in some areas, like on the knees and things, or on sort of like the lower back and the bum cheeks, because these are going to get the most wear, and it just makes the skin really hardened and gritty. And just in case now, go through the entire miniature and neaten everything up where you might have gone over with another colour. So to unify it at this point, all these sort of layers and things, and getting them all to blend together, and any of the greener areas, I'm putting in quite a heavy moss green wash by Green Stuff World, and then on the lighter skin areas I water it down 2 to 1, because I don't want it to stain the actual that ochre colour too much, and this will just unify and blend all of those colours together and just start to bring it actually to life. And just while we're on the washes stage, I've been guilty of this. I've put this on, washes and things in the past, and it starts to go into sort of the nooks and crannies, and it brings out the detail, and then it looks really, really shiny, and it just doesn't. You feel like it's not as good as it can be. What I'd say at that point is just take your time, trust in the process, because when that is fully dry and we varnish that down with a nice matte varnish, it's going to knock the edge off that and knock all that glistening, which is obviously going to show up on your desk light and stuff, and bring it back. Because the idea of the actual wash is it's a colour filter just to unify all the layers. And then by using different varnishes, so satin usually for skins, or in this case because it's quite earthy, I'm going to use a lot of matte varnish on the actual skin itself, and then the little globe that it's holding and its eyes and a bit of sort of drill and things, put gloss varnish there just to differentiate from the two. But after everything's dried, do a unifying varnish and sort of take a step back and look at it, because you'd be surprised how well it works on the paint job. And it's just that glossiness that you find in a lot of the washes, it sort of spoils it a little bit. And as I say, just varnish it back and then have a look before you decide whether or not you want to go back a step or start something again. Right, so first of all, like an absolute numpty, I forgot to press record when I was painting the orange globe. Now the reason I went for orange because it works nice with green, and it's going in with that the ochre colour that's on the softer part of the skin, and it's more of an earthy, natural sort of colour compared to, you know, if I did something like a red or a purple, it would stand out too much. But yeah, so I've completely forgot to record that bit, which is annoying, but that's just blended in from brown to orange, dark to light, and that'll get a gloss varnish at the end. But for the base, so what I'm using is the Dirty Down Rust and the Dirty Down Moss, and just working this round, because it actually leaves a really nice finish, something that I found out in the Father of Silence video from a couple of weeks ago, and it makes it look like quite a swampy, rotten ground. That's, you know, and then when you start dabbing on things like the moss green colour in there and mixing it through, you get these nice variations of colour, and then a bit of dry brushing and it'll pop and it'll look really nice. And then the Dirty Down Moss is used just on selected areas, especially on the underside of this stone throne that the creature's sitting on, just because I want it to look like the moss is growing up from sort of the natural swamp, and it's, you know, nature's starting to overtake all these weird structures and things. But these paints are absolutely brilliant. I'm looking forward to getting the new versions, because they've got this sort of like a wet ichor gore and a new blood paint as well. And at this point it's just the final few details, so these couple of piles of bones, these get a dark sand colour. The trees, I just basically mix up what's left on my wet palette with various greens and sort of dab it on so you get a bit of variation. These items will all get a brown wash and then dry brushed up, really, really simple. And that'll finish the actual project. So as we go into the glamour shots now, enjoy the story of the bog hag. In the forgotten corners of the whispering pines where shadows danced with the light and the air hung thick with an unsettling chill, an old tale lingered among the townsfolk. The legend of Malis, the forest hag. She was said to be a vengeful spirit twisted by years that she'd spent guarding her domain, a grim protector of the woods, and those who dared to trespass her boundaries were never seen again, their bones joining the countless others that littered her lair deep within the heart of the forest. One autumn evening, when the leaves blazed with fiery hues, a group of adventurous teens from the nearby town decided to test that legend. Fueled by bravado and the thrill of the unknown, they gathered their supplies, flashlights, pocket knives, cameras, and document their adventure into the horrifying heart of the woods. Pushing each other on, they pressed deeper and deeper into those woods. The sunlight waned, and as a palpable tension replaced their earlier bravado, a thick fog began to rise, coiling around the tree trunks like a living thing, and the air grew heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and rot. Their laughter and bravado eventually faded, replaced by an uneasy silence, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon a clearing, a desolate space marked by an ancient gnarled tree at its centre. The tree itself had twisted and contorted, its bark resembling gnarled hands clawing for life. And at its base they found the remnants of what looked like bones, small, hollow and bleached by the elements. One of the children immediately said, "We should go," and urged the others, but everyone else was intrigued, peering closer to the eerie collection. They didn't notice all of the small little tree branches that had been adorned into these weird shapes hanging above them, or the figure lurking just beyond the tree line. It was Malis, the ancient hag. Her hunched back shadowed her face, and only two small lights gave away her eyes. Her skin sagged like that of an old dead animal, and with the folds, many small eyes and faces protruded, the faces of her victims, each twisted in anguish and pain. Her hair was a wild tangle of twigs and moss, her limbs twitched with anticipation, and her long legs bent as she squatted ready to pounce. In one hand, a dull orange orb, she moved around as if using it to see with. Then, without warning, shadows twisted and merged, forming solid shapes that darted through the trees. Each movement seemed to beckon the children deeper into the forest, drawing them away from safety. They began to feel the pull of the sinister energy lurking just beyond their sight. Enthralled, the teenagers moved forward, to embrace into Melis's bosom. The snaps of twigs and bones echoed through the glade, and the forest once again began to swell with darkness. She had taken more victims. As the last of the teenagers died, in that moment they understood the truth of the legend. Melis was both guardian and predator, bound to the woods by a curse as old as time. Anyone who trespassed would become part of her collection, an offering to sustain her hunger, their bones forever entwined with the roots of the forest. They would become her children.